Hi, I'm Dr. Paul Haefner. Welcome to Sports Psych in Minute, your weekly resource for insights and tips into the psychological side of equestrian sport. I saw a meme on Facebook this week, which was an old saying about expectations and disappointments. It said, "Expect nothing and you won't be disappointed." I think in many ways that sentiment is really appealing to us, in the sense that a lot of times when we get our hopes up, we feel like that contributes to our being disappointed at the end of the day. The unfortunate thing is that it really is unrealistic to think we wouldn't have expectations. Expectations and their cousin, assumptions, are natural parts of the way that we process information and live in the world. And they have an important role for everybody in terms of helping us be more efficient in the way that we approach things. The idea that we have an idea or an expectation about how things work, how they're going to go, helps us organize our behavior in such a way that we move through things without a lot of energy spent in sort of waiting and figuring out. We then have our expectations and we make assumptions as we move along. The problem always comes when those expectations are violated in some way, shape, or form. Now, if it involves something in the world like an expectation that traffic is going to be a particular way, or that something is at a particular time, or that certain resources might be available. A lot of times in those situations, we feel frustrated, we feel disappointed, we feel upset. Interestingly enough, though, the violations of those assumptions and expectations, often we turn those things against ourselves. So the disappointment and the frustration is with ourselves, and you get self-critical talk like, oh, how could I be so stupid to think it was going to go that way? When these sorts of conflicts with our expectations and assumptions involve either other people or they involve our equine partners, something different seems to happen. And when we run into those sorts of conflicts where a horse or another person violates our expectations, then often, because these are creatures we perceive with agency, that they're making choices and they're behaving in ways that they get to determine, we very quickly go to blaming the horse. We very quickly go to blaming other people for the conflicts that arise. How do we address that and how do we deal with that? Well, the very first thing I would strongly suggest that people do is to maintain an awareness that we are setting expectations and that we are making assumptions all of the time. The simple awareness that we have expectations and we make assumptions that may or may not line up with our world is often something that helps us navigate conflict a lot more easily as we move along, and we can be both forgiving of self and others when we keep that thought in mind. The other piece of it is that when you run into a conflict, either with your horse or you run into a conflict with another person, if you begin your process by looking inward and saying, okay, so what were my expectations? And was I making certain assumptions about this and how things would go? That's going to go a long ways to helping resolve conflicts more easily and move past them more quickly than if we are to immediately go and to blame the other. Because when we're in that kind of frame of blaming the other, often what happens is that conflicts escalate really, really quickly, and then those escalations often have longer-term consequences. And this is Sports Psych in a Minute. We'll see you next week.